Hi, this is Pat Barrett. Um, just me and my dog. You may have seen some of the TikTok videos or reels that I made during the presidential campaign, and then a couple more recently. But I've decided to switch to YouTube, partly because it gives me a little bit more room to talk, which could be a problem. So we're going to try to exercise discipline because the TikTok reels restricted me to about 4 minutes. A little bit longer would be useful. I'm wearing a shirt, CTOL, which is an ASU, Arizona State University. I'm assuming most of my viewers are going to be local, so they know ASU. School of, I always forget, Economic Thought and Leaders. That's funny. I can't remember what the C stands for. Um, but I used to go to their lectures at ASU. They were pretty good. But a friend suggested that it may be a stalking horse to get more conservatives into ASU. I'm not against that. That's fine. But as time went on, the speakers began to trend a little bit more one sided. They used to have, even of a very conservative speaker, they'd have a liberal speaker, you might say, back and forth, which is great. But that began to go away, and I began to resent the fact that, in fact, um, someone involved with it was on a platform on the dais sharing with a person who was, in fact, a liberal, one of their speakers. And that person said, well, since you're a conservative, and so he said, well, since I've been outed. Outed, that means someone hiding something. So was this school of thought, were they hiding the fact that they were trying to bring a more conservative viewpoint? Why? What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. Why would you try and hide it? It aroused suspicions in me. And in Arizona, we have a number of people who are very much on the conservative side. In fact, my concern today is those who are way over, not really conservative, but far right, or what a recently published writer and scholar has called the New Right. And I want to give just an example, not to say that this person is on the New Right, part of the New Right, but sounds a lot like it. And that is Senator John Kavanaugh of the Arizona State Legislature. And our Attorney General here, a Democrat, recently criticized ICE. And he went after her saying she should resign. And what I hear is authoritarianism for daring to criticize an arm of the federal government. Since when have conservatives not criticized the federal government? That's been their gripe ever since the New Deal in the 1930s. The federal government. Now all of a sudden, because Trump is the president and the Republicans are dominant in, well, not that dominant anymore, dominant in the House and Senate, we cannot have any criticism. And, and I will do one of these things on authoritarianism, but let me get back to the New Right. This book I mentioned, Laura Field, she's a scholar. She came out of a conservative school of thought. It's called Straussianism. It sounds like a rap thing, West Coast, East Coast Straussians. Very serious people, and very scholarly. And she was part of that. But she said she was never really a conservative. And then she saw some things happen. I'll get more into the dramatic way in which she realized she needed to talk about these people. She said basically, to put it simply, there are three kinds of new right groups. The National Conservatives, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. Yeah, and the Post Liberals and the Claremonters. Um, the three groups have a great deal in common. Primarily, a tremendous hostility toward anything to the left of them. I'm not talking about left-wingers, communists and so forth, or even progressives. I'm talking about, and I'll give you an example. I started teaching in 1986, 87, and there was a department there that I was part of, and I got wind of the fact that they were referring to me as a radical. Radical? I'm a liberal Democrat my whole life, not even progressive. Liberal Democrat, what's radical about that? I found someone who's kind of in that group, but sort of on the edge, and I said, what's that about? Why are they saying that? Can you find out what they're talking about? That person went back and then came to me and said, what they're referring to is the fact that you vote for Democrats. That made me a radical. This is the 1980s. So this stuff among so-called conservatives has been around a long time. You can't even vote for one of the two major parties without being called a radical if that party is not their party. And that goes to the heart of a lot of this. And I have some more on that. And I was thinking of that just today, because I was going to do this. This is my first YouTube video, and I'm kind of excited about it. I'm already 7 minutes, twice as long as my TikTok reels, so let me wind this up. It dawned on me when I was, writing some notes to kind of prep for this, what could have led them to say that? And I remembered I taught foreign languages most of the time, but initially I was a social studies teacher, and I taught government. And one of the messages that I gave my students, which they found strange, and boy, there's a lot behind that, bringing religion in and all kinds of things, but right now I'll just say this. I always told them, this democracy is held together by chewing gum and baling wire. That's an old expression. You can look it up. It's like a jury-rigged thing. Your lawnmower breaks or something, and you kind of mess with it and put some wires on it and try and hold it together. That's that idea. That's what our democracy is. There is nothing that says we have to be a democracy. It's all up to each one of us. And I think that expression got back to some of those people, and they didn't like it. They liked the idea that our democracy, and there's a distinction between liberal democracy and illiberal democracy. We'll get into that one time. But they think that this country, whether you call it a democracy or not, and not all of them are happy about that, was founded by a religious figure of some kind. We'll talk more about that also. But I want to keep this, two things. I want to keep a local perspective, which is why I brought in the state legislature, and I'll be talking about bills before the legislature as I find out more about them. And also, what I want is, just like I did today, I want to bring in something personal that I experienced. So I'm not getting all my stuff out of a book or something like that. I am talking about things I experienced. And my age, let's be up front, I'm 84 years old, and I've lived in the Valley almost all my life, except when I was a little kid. and I remember snow. So, uh, and I think that gives me a perspective. And I thought, well, some old guy telling stories about the old days. I discovered a lot of young people are interested. So maybe you are. If you are, then do whatever you do with YouTube things that you like. Or if you don't like, it's all right too. Um, Click on whatever you click on. Tech is not my field, okay? Likes, dislike, make a comment, join up, and I will at some future time. Well, in fact, I think you could go to arizona.progressive.insight TikTok and find me, Pat Barrett. There goes the person who set me up with this. So I'm going to pause right now and proudly show them my first video. Thank you.